Hi everyone, so today we have an election prediction. Actually not an election prediction, it is an analysis of the 2020 elections. So we start off, we'll just go through the primary first. On the Democratic side, I expect the Democrats to nominate someone like Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders who can really bring out many of these independent voters and many of these Democratic voters. I don't think it would necessarily work in their favor if they nominated someone like Hillary Clinton or Cory Booker, someone not necessarily gonna bring out independents to come and vote for them. So I expect someone like Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders to win the Democratic primary. Over on the Republican side, if there is a primary, I do expect for Donald Trump to win his primary pretty easily. I don't think it would be very hard for him to do. But even then, he might not even have some kind of primary fight. So I will be filling it in with safe and leaning and likely states. With no independent, but I'm just going to put it as safe and toss-up for now, so I don't need to click many times when I'm doing the safe states. So starting off with the safe states, we know that the Democrats will perform well on the West Coast. New Mexico would definitely go to them. Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, the DC, New York, Vermont, Maine, as Illinois. As for the Republican states, Alaska, Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, West Virginia. And one electoral vote in Nebraska would be considered a toss-up. So we start off with 188 electoral votes for the Democrat, 163 for the Republicans. So now let's just go into safe, likely, leaning, and toss-up. And we will include other in the color rotation, and I'll be using that for the pure toss-ups. So we will start off in the South. The South is an area that is progressively becoming more democratic along this southeastern portion of the US, if you will. Virginia, North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida are all becoming more democratic. Georgia and Virginia in particular. We will start off with the state of Florida. This is generally considered to be a state, a pure toss-up state that leans ever so slightly in the direction of the right, in the Republicans' favor. However, it's still pretty much a pure toss-up. Going against a generic Democrat, definitely a pure toss-up. I won't factor in the Joe Biden / Bernie Sanders because that would be more of an election prediction, not really an analysis. So in Florida, this is a pure toss-up. So those 29 electoral votes are a pure toss-up against Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders. I think that Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders would carry the state of Florida. Going over to the state of Georgia, again, a progressively more democratic state. However, I think that the Republicans will be able to keep this in their hands in a likely fashion. It would be likely for the Republicans. It would probably only be leaning for Bernie Sanders or even probably a pure toss-up if it's against Joe Biden given his appeal. But we're not factoring in their appeals. And against a generic Democrat, I see Georgia being likely for the Republicans. Going over to North Carolina, it's a state that's progressively becoming more democratic. However, against a generic Democrat, again, I don't see these minorities coming out to vote. North Carolina is a state becoming more democratic. However, I think that North Carolina will retain its Republican identity and stay in the Republican column at least for another 4 years, maybe in 2024. It could go to the Democrats, but in 2020, I don't think so. Going over to Virginia, it's definitely progressively becoming more democratic. I see Virginia, it would be a likely for the Democrat against Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders. I'll lean it blue. Actually, in 2020, this would be likely for the Democrats given its changing demographics, etc. So now that we've got the South out of the way, the next area of the country that I want to go to is the Northeast. And then we'll go on to the Midwest and out onto the West and then the Rust Belt. So the Northeast is an area that is generally considered pretty much Democratic. However, Maine and New Hampshire could be considered toss-ups. We will start in the state of Maine. So Maine is a state that is generally considered to be pretty much safe Democratic. However, with Trump's appeal, he was actually able to win the 2nd district, but lost Maine at large. The 1st district is safe Democratic. For Maine at large, I think that it would be likely for the Democrats, Maine at large, and in the 2nd district, I think that this is likely for the Republicans. I don't see that the Democrats coming out to vote in the northern part of Maine. It would probably actually be more closer to a leaning than a likely. Going over to the state of New Hampshire, I think that New Hampshire is leaning Democratic. I don't think that needs much explanation. It's becoming more of a purple state. However, I think that the Democrats will be able to win out the ground game in the state of New Hampshire. It's a state that has a very early primary, and it's a state that you have to engage in the traditional retail politics, if you will, where you need to meet with the locals and shake hands, etc. Going over so that's the Northeast. Finish will actually just stop over in Nebraska just right now. I think that this is leaning for Trump. If it's Bernie Sanders, I could see him taking that 2nd district, but no other Democrat really has a good enough Midwestern appeal to pull off a victory in the Nebraska Senate. Oh my goodness! In the 2nd district of Nebraska. So the next area. Oh, what's that? Okay. So the next area that we're going to look at is the West. We have 3 states: Colorado, and Arizona, and Nevada. This area of the country, pretty much all this area minus Utah, is progressively becoming more Democratic. So that's pretty interesting. Okay, sorry, that's finished. So this has been an area that's progressively more democratic, as I already said. Colorado, I think that this is a state that is likely for the Democrats. I think that the Democrats will win in Colorado because of the different demographics that are coming into the state. Arizona, this I think would be leaning for the Republicans. It's definitely described with Georgia. However, I think Arizona is leaning. However, Georgia is likely. But Arizona is progressively becoming more democratic in 2024 after 8 years of Trump. With party fatigue factored in, it's not necessarily going to look good for the Republicans in 2024. But in 2020, I see them holding on to the state of Arizona. Over in Nevada, I think that this is leaning for the Democrats. I don't think it will be very hard for them to do that. However, I think that the demographics are turning the tides in the state of Nevada. And the last place that we're going to look at is the Rust Belt. that I've been saving this to the end because I knew it would decide the election like this. So we will start off in the states that are the most Republican to the most Democratic. So we will start off with the state of Iowa. Donald Trump won that state by quite a large margin. And I think that with Iowa, like Missouri used to be a pure toss-up. It's been shifting in the Republicans' favor. Iowa is shifting in the Republicans' favor. And Donald Trump won it by a huge margin. I think that Iowa is likely for the Republicans, if not that leaning. Actually, Arizona, I'm changing it to a likely, same as Iowa and Georgia. Over in Ohio, again, Trump won it by quite a large margin. I think that, this is a leaning Republican state. Going over to the state of Minnesota. After this, the next most Republican state is the state of Wisconsin. Wisconsin was previously considered a safe Democratic state. I think that this would be considered a leaning Democratic state, leaning in the Democratic column. If not that, it's probably more closer to a pure toss-up rather than a leaning one way or the other. Going over to the state of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is a state that is quickly becoming quite more Republican. However, I think that the Democrats will edge things out in the state of Pennsylvania. The next most Democratic state is Michigan. Michigan is pretty much going to go to the Democrats. I can't see a Trump victory there. And the last state is the state of Minnesota. Hillary Clinton won the state. I think that they will pull it off once again in the state of Minnesota. So the final kind of analysis, if you will, is 268 electoral votes for the Democrat, 231 for the Republican, with Wisconsin and Florida being considered just too close to call. I just don't have enough information to make a characterization on those two races at this point in time. Thank you for watching this video. Comment down suggestions below, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.